Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of the Roaring Agents podcast. Today I have Eli Schaugh. Eli has been on the podcast, I think, what, three times so far?
I think so. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, I love having Eli on the podcast because he and I think very similar in certain ways. And I think right now I asked him to come on the podcast because obviously there's been a lot going on in our world of real estate, a lot of uncertainty about what's happening. And the truth is, as much as we can make predictions about what's going to happen about the lawsuit and everything that's going on, none of our predictions matter. Who knows what's going to happen? What we need are the skills that are going to help us deal with whatever's coming. Eli is a master practitioner NLP. He teaches classes, consultations that convert, all these other great things. I've taken the classes, love his stuff, which is why he's been on the podcast. And he is the perfect person to help us navigate these next steps in real estate. Long intro, long. Hi, Eli.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
Well, like I said, now's the time. Everyone's looking to level up. I think like half of it, like EXP just had a big YouTube meeting yesterday. 48,000 agents showed up at that. You can't get anyone's buy-in to do anything with independent contractors like that. That's how important the subject is.
Yeah,
So, what tell us about your experience? You've been doing buyer broker agreements for a long time, and I think that's an important piece to talk about here.
yeah.
Uh, let's talk about your history.
Okay. Well, I started in real estate in 2009, which was not a time when a lot of people were getting into real estate.
Right.
But at the time, I really needed somehow more consistent money doing that than what I had been doing before. And started doing rentals in New York City.
Mm,
Rentals in New York City are a very, very unique market. And at that time, we're kind of upside down, as a lot of stuff was. But it was a market where typically people would have to pay, the tenant would have to pay a commission to the real estate agent. It wasn't the landlord who would pay, it was the tenant. But in 2009, because things were kind of upside down, landlords were paying fees. So it was one of those easy ways to start getting into the business. But it started all with, regardless of how I'm going to work with you, I must have something signed or I can't show you the property. So from day one, I was using, it was renter agreements, not buyer agreements, but they were essentially saying, I'm going to represent you and I'm going to get paid for anything that happens while I'm working with you. So I got to learn about that really right out of the gate. And I think not less than 8 months later, the market had shifted back, at least the rental market in New York City, to where now all of a sudden, bam, renters had to pay the fee again. And it was a very similar kind of feeling of they're just out there and they pay for whatever to literally you wake up the next day and all of the landlord fees were gone.
mm.
And suddenly I had to start asking is the polite way to put it. It was like, I can't work with you unless you pay because no one else is going to pay me. And I had to learn to have that conversation overnight. I think
Mm.
that the entire group of landlords, except maybe one large group, held out like for an extra few weeks. But all of the landlords in New York City turned off paying the fee within a single week. Like one did it, and then three did it, and then all of them within 1 week. And the entire market changed. And I had to have that conversation saying that, sorry, that's just not how things are anymore. If you want this apartment, you have to pay the fee. And it kind of trickled slow, but then fast because landlords had been paying 1 month's rent as a fee, which is a pretty good fee, especially for prices in New York City. And this was 2009. Back then, it was already high. Now it's, you know, outrageously high compared to that. Um, But rather quickly after that, it started to speed up. So it went from you don't have to pay a fee to you have to pay a 1 month fee. Let's just do apples to apples. But that's not where things were before the crash. Before the crash, some agents were charging 12% of a year's rent. A lot were charging 15% of 1 year's rent as the rental fee to work with an agent.
Mm.
And being the entrepreneur that I've been and having the skill set that I kind of naturally had at the time before I really had a lot of training in it, I jumped to that 15% rather quickly. And what I found made the biggest difference, which is what I'm going to be sharing with people a lot over the next number of months, is confidence. Saying things in a way where I'm the professional, this is what I mean, I have the access and I have the skills, and it's not to be mean about it. I'm not trying to be a gatekeeper, except for the fact that I literally have the keys. But other than that, if you want to work with me, this is what it is. This is how it works. And there would always be the question of, well, is that negotiable? That moment right there was where I had to learn what it meant to have a standard. And when I have a standard, it means I can't accept anything less. That's what a standard is. Whatever you accept is your standard. So if you accept something that isn't your standard, you've got a new standard. It's lower. So if my standard was I get 15% of a year's rent for every rental property that I transact. That was a weird way to say that. But every apartment that I rent, this is how it works. If I give somebody a break on that, now what if they tell their friend? What if they tell their coworker? That person comes to work with me, and now it becomes a matter of fairness. Who did I do what with? And I'm trying to keep up. Instead, I just decided it's easier to tell the truth, and this is what it always is. And when you have a standard that doesn't change and you can make good on that standard, then people will talk about you in a positive way and you're worth it. But if you start moving it around, nobody knows what game you're really playing, and suddenly the trust is gone. So I knew I had to hold that standard. And this was, again, something I had to learn quickly because a lot of these agreements were signed on street corners. At certain points in my career there, I did have an office and I did have a desk, and people would come in and meet with me and we'd identify apartments and we'd go out looking together. That was some of the time I spent doing rentals in New York. There was also a lot of it where people would just meet me on the corner of where the building was. And I'd have a clipboard, and then eventually I moved to having an iPad so I could do it digitally and have it fast, but I had it in my hand. Hi, what's your name? So, right, nice to meet you. I need you to sign this before we go anywhere. And it just became a standard of business. Now, when you're working with a buyer, that becomes a little bit different. So when I moved from New York to Los Angeles, I moved from rentals into doing sales. And the money on the table is a lot more when you're doing sales. So I took more time. I slowed things down and I began working with buyer representation agreements right out of the gate, always used them, and they always had a fee included. Because I used them so regularly and so many other agents didn't, I then became responsible for teaching the buyer broker agreement, the California buyer broker agreement, throughout multiple real estate offices around Los Angeles because so many people didn't use them and I did. So I knew how to break them down. I knew how to explain them. I knew how to help people use them because it was something that was natural to me at that point. And I still do now in Colorado. So I'm still licensed in California and in Colorado. I use buyer agreements in both. They're actually required in Colorado. So this is an area that I want to shine light on for agents because the way you communicate about what you're asking someone to sign and how you're defining value for them is the reason why they're going to happily pick up the pen or DocuSign it, whatever it is, but they're gonna put their name on an agreement when they feel great about hiring you and the value that you're going to give them, which is really what it comes down to is clarity. When you can give them enough clarity about what they're doing and why they're doing it, that's when the answer becomes easily yes. So that was kind of a long answer to how did I get comfortable with that subject, but it's been years. I've been doing it since 2009 in 3 different markets under different circumstances. I historically did work more with buyers and renters than I did with sellers. So this is something I've had a lot of practice doing.
So you were in LA where it sounds like it was not typical to have a buyer broker agreement. I'm
Yeah.
in Oregon where it's not typical. It's going to be quite quickly, but I know of maybe 1 or 2 people who regularly do buyer broker agreements. And I'll admit that I think for most of us, it's laziness and just like, but it's also like no one else did it. So when you started doing this in LA, did you have anyone say, well, no one else does this. Why do I have to do this with you?
I was I was given that objection pretty regularly. And so, oh, I've bought things. I've never had to sign something like this before. And the way I would commonly address that objection or concern was, well, just because you did something one way in the past doesn't mean it's the right way to do it now. So that was part of it. Part of it was also the confidence of that's okay. A lot of agents don't take their business as seriously as I do. I'm trying to think through some of the other ones that I probably did, which were probably along the lines of this is true. All of this is 100% true. None of this was to try to be manipulative. I did take my business more seriously than other people. Just because you did something one way in the past does not mean it's the right way to do it today. Things have changed. Um, but another thing that was really important, and this is built into the California Association of Realtors document, at least the one that I used at that time, it clearly defines the expectations, responsibilities, and legal obligations of both sides, the agent and the buyer, so that there's an understanding of what happens under what circumstances. It creates protections and it creates clear standards and expectations. So when I would go through that with a buyer, even if they said, oh, I've never had to look at this before, I've never gone through this, or, oh, your consultation takes 4 times longer than anyone I've met with. Good. My answer was always good. You deserve that. I'm going to go through this with you to make sure that you are getting what you deserve and that you know what's happening and what to expect. And if we didn't do this, I would be doing you a disservice. Signing just a disclosure, a 1 or 2 page disclosure about what agency means, does not in any way describe what the role of a real estate agent actually is. Here are the things that I'm going to do. Here are the things that I'm going to ask from you. There was a clause in that one that if you're creating your own, or it depends on the state whether you can create your own or not. In Colorado, we can't. But if you're adding a clause or creating your own document, or you're working with your state documents, look for this or see if there's a way for you to include it. Things about timeline expectations for your buyer. That was one of the most powerful parts of this agreement. This was like a 7 to 9 page agreement in California. It was long. It was a lot of legalese in there, and I took the time to study it so I could explain it. And there was a part in there about timeline expectations. One was that time is of the essence. If I send you something or I request something from you, this is a now thing. You wait till tomorrow, it could totally derail your process. So this is part of meeting me. I'm telling you right now, here's what to expect. Here's how you need to respond. And if you don't, in kind of layman's terms, you can't blame me. It's your fault. You messed up. But what I'm really doing it for, and my intention behind it, is this is how I need you as the buyer to participate in this process if you want to win. If you actually want to buy a home, this is how it's going to go. So time is of the essence. And also, there was a written commitment clause. I didn't put this in there. It was part of the document about by when, and there was a fill in the blank, but what was the timeline for them getting pre-approved? So there was a setup about this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And when you do these things in this order, bam, here's what happens on the other side. You get to buy a home, and I get to represent you in this way. But we're setting up the relationship. It's all in explaining the buyer representation agency or exclusivity agreement. So whatever your document is in your state, or if you're creating one, or if your broker has one, look for the parts that you can explain the details of what they should expect, what they're going to get from you, and what their responsibility is in the process. You're creating alignment around a particular goal. That goal is get them the house that they want. There were parts in there about inspections. There were clear definitions in there about how, as an agent, I am not responsible for the inspections. I will gladly recommend people, and just because I recommend them does not mean that they're the person you have to use or necessarily want to. I'll make a referral if I think it's appropriate, based on my past experience or someone who recommended this person to me, and you are under no obligation to use them, but you are obligated as the buyer to do your own inspections. And if you don't, that's not anyone's fault but yours. You are being told in a large page of bold lettering, it is your job to be careful, learn these things, do these inspections, ask for repairs, all that. Like, I'm going to help you figure it out, but I'm teaching you, I'm training you in the consultation what to expect, how to be prepared, and how to protect yourself. All of
So,
this was in the buyer agreement.
so I'm guessing you've had a license for a very long time in two different states, and you've been coaching for quite a while. I'm guessing versus other agents, you have a lot less problem clients than most agents.
Yeah, I do. I do. It's almost entirely based on the clarity that I create up front. Um, Conflict in almost any relationship comes from a misunderstanding of expectations most of the time. There's plenty of other things that you can have conflict about, but generally speaking, especially in business, conflict arises out of unmet or misaligned expectations. So if you can get really clear on day one what the expectations are of both sides, and everyone is signing off on that, it makes it really hard to have a problem. Makes it really, really hard for someone to say, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen. Yes, you did. You signed something that said you did.
I think a lot of agents, they just grit and hope an issue doesn't come up. And I'm the one that's more likely to over disclose and over explain things. And I know some of my clients they're just that high D. They just don't care. Let's just whatever. And I'm like, I want you to understand this. And I got my friend who's just like, I'll deal with it if it comes up. I'm like, that is chaotic.
It
And
is.
and he has a lot of chaotic things happen. And I'm like, I think you're proving that if you get ahead of these stuff ahead of time, I just love that idea that you're going through so much of this stuff, which I'm sure some people probably don't like. How do you deal with the people who are like, oh, I just want to get through this? Come on. How do you slow them down
The
and
buyers.
explain to them? Yeah, the buyers.
Yeah.
How do you
How do
explain to them that this is the value? Because you've got to have something like, come on, can we just get this done? I'll just sign.
the one-liner that tends to go along with that, which again, and you know about this, you've got to be in rapport if you're going to deliver something like this. If you're not, then back it up, slow down, make sure that you're, in rapport with them, you're on the same wavelength, the energy is similar between you and the person across the table or on the other side of the screen, because I do most of this uh, virtually or digitally. I have for years. Um, but the simplest answer is, well, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, when will you have time to fix it? And uh, depending on the disc profile, everyone's going to have a different kind of response to that. And you and I love talking disc, but that high D who's going to be like, oh, it's going to be fine. I just want to get it done. Okay, if we just get it done and then it's wrong, are you really going to want to have to deal with it later? And that's something that tends to bring people back. They're like, no, but how long is this really going to take? I'm happy to go through a speed version of it. I'm still going to hit the things that are important. There are parts of it where if the person wants to look at it themselves, take your time. If you don't, I'll explain it. But this section right here, that's all capital letters in bold, which there usually is in any real estate contract, there's always that one paragraph that's like, this is the one more than anything else. If you don't read this, it's your fault. I always just point at it and go, you need to read this. I'm not explaining this one. It's in capital letters and bold type for a reason. Read that and let me know when you're ready to continue. So no matter how fast they want to go, that's the one where they have to slow down. And if they choose to skim it or not read it at all, now at that point, I've put it in front of them. They're signing something that has been clearly expressed. This is important. I can't control what they do. But if they aren't willing to even have the conversation, that becomes standard number two. I'm not taking them as a client. I have very few problems with my clients because I only take clients who fit the kind of profile that I want to work with. So one of the things that I say at the beginning of every consultation, and this is not, I didn't make this up, I learned this along the way and now I use it, is that there are three possible outcomes for how this is going to go today. You'll either decide to hire me, you might decide not to hire me, or I might decide not to take you as a client. If for any reason I feel like we're not a good fit or I can't meet your expectations if I think they're unrealistic. Near the end of the consultation, as we're getting ready to go through paperwork, I'm bringing that up again. It's been so nice getting to know you. I've done a full consultation before we get to the buyer agreement. I realized we didn't talk about that before. What's the order of this? We set an appointment. We have the consultation. My consultations are usually a minimum of an hour before we even get to any paperwork, because that's how deep I go, because I want to work with someone effectively, efficiently, help them get what they want. And in my track record, if I have to take a buyer out more than 3 times, I have done something wrong. For almost my entire career, I'm sure there have been a handful of exceptions, one person here, 2 people there over years. But the last time I reviewed my stats, I had an 8-year string that I looked at. And in that 8 years, my average was 3 outings or less for every buyer, and accepted offer on average, it was, some people took 2, but the overwhelming majority was write 1 offer and it gets accepted because they know what they want. They're incredibly motivated. We learned about their financial plan and everything upfront in the consultation. So when it's time to write that offer, they are all in. They know exactly what they're doing and they get that house. So I have that stat record that I also wanted to protect. And that all began from doing in-depth consultations that included education about the process, getting them prepared, and setting standards. I don't work with you unless you sign this. I don't show you houses until you're already pre-approved and I have the letter. You can go and look at whatever you want because we'll have already signed this agreement, but I'm not going with you until you're pre-approved. And then along the way, we're playing to win instead of not to lose. And I teach people what that means. It's a different mindset about how you approach writing an offer. All
Yeah.
of this happens in the buyer consultation.
So as far as the disc goes, I'm a high S, high C. So that has been terrible for me as a buyer's agent is I want to show you all the homes because my S wants to make sure that you're happy and the C in me wants to make sure that we have all the information. And that is completely stupid.
I wouldn't say that it's stupid. I'd say
That's
that it's
stupid.
caring. It's caring
It's
because you want what's
not
best for your
effective.
client. There you go. It might not be effective. I do think I wouldn't call it stupid because I think there are a lot of buyers who are nervous and anxious and want to know that they've seen everything that they possibly could. So I learned again, this is a huge part of just how I got into this business, doing rentals in New York City. If you want to see everything you can, you're never going to get anything. It was a regular thing that we would be out. We might have a list of, on average, I would try to show 3 to 5 apartments. There were plenty where I only showed 1. And occasionally, for the times where I had people come into the office and we did the whole thing and we start looking in the computer and I go gather the keys, it's all done together, we might have a list of like 12. There were probably 2 or 3 times that we actually looked at all of them, because as soon as we walked into the one that they wanted or liked, we knew that was the moment where we get our butts back to the office and get an application in, because if we are off by a second, that place will be gone. So it was no longer about, let's make sure you see everything. It was, oh, you like this? Go. Now, the worst experience I ever had with that was I found, I was working with I think it was a couple. We went and saw a place. We're in it talking to who we thought was the decision maker for the apartment, and said, okay, we're going to go put in an application. Great. We're really excited. It'll be so great to have you living here. And on the walk from the apartment to the subway, it was like 3 blocks, got a phone call saying, sorry, it was just rented. Not only was that person not the landlord, I think it was actually the super who just presented himself like he was in charge of the building, like they do. And so that guy called me. He was like, I'm so sorry. Someone just walked in and handed me a check. It's off the market. So that, I already knew that, but that was the defining experience of, I do not show you everything. If we've got a list of 12, what are the top 3 we're going there first? And then if you don't like them, we can see about the others in case the pictures are different than what we were expecting. But we're going to the number 1, the number 2. And if you will already like 1 or 2, we're not even seeing 3. It is go time. And I learned that's how you get people what they want. If you keep showing people every option, they get overwhelmed, they get confused. I had them take notes so they could try to differentiate all the different places they'd see. Because this isn't seeing a few houses a day for 3 months. This is seeing sometime, it was on a off day is what I would call it, seeing 12 apartments in 3 hours. Is go, 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 go. What was that last one like? I don't remember. Did you want it? I don't know anymore. If you like it, we're done. That's the one that we're getting. Um, so every time, so this is part of my process that I wasn't really going to get into today, but I'll explain it really quickly. Again, during the buyer consultation, and I'm giving little pieces here and there because as we're talking about this, my mind is like, oh yeah, that's something I do. That's something I do. I teach all of this. I teach all of this. And so there are courses where if you want to learn how I do this, there's like an actual this, and here's the conversation, and here are the questions, and here's what it leads to next, and here's the flow. Like you can come and take that class if you want to, and we'll get to that. But a really important piece is I teach my buyers during the consultation that they're going to be rating every single property we walk into. And the way I like to do that is it's on a scale of 0 to 10. 10 is paradise. It's the Garden of Eden. It doesn't exist. So nothing that we see will ever be a 10. It's not possible. 0 on the other end is horrible, disgusting. It's like being in hell. It's cruel and unusual punishment. You wouldn't wish this on your worst enemy. This is not possible. This is not livable. It is as bad as it could possibly ever be. What we're aiming at as we go out and look at properties is a 7, 8, and 9. A 7 meets all of your needs. That's it. All of your needs, everything that's a must is there. An 8 has all of your needs and some of your wants. And a 9 has all your needs, all your wants, and maybe even something extra. So as we go into every home, first thing is, if it's not at least a 7, we're leaving. Because it doesn't have all your needs. So let's stop wasting your time. Maybe the description was bad. Maybe the pictures were weird. Somehow we accidentally walked into something that's less than a 7. Let's go. You're not buying this house. We don't have to be nice. We don't have to take the time. You're not buying it. Let's not get anyone's hopes up. Let's just leave. Let's move on to the next thing. If it's a 7, I'm going to ask you, okay, if you were to write an offer on this, what would you write? If it's an 8, it'd be, that seems pretty exciting. Do you want to write an offer on this? And if you say it's a 9, I'm ending the showing. We're going back to my office and we're writing an offer right now. Because those don't come along very often. And chances are, if you're excited about it, someone else is too. Now, this comes from my background in rentals in New York City. But it's absolutely true. If you're excited about a house, there's a really good chance someone else is also, even if they haven't been until today. We've all seen that happen. No offers, maybe a little adjustment, something's going on, and then bam, multiple offers on the same day. Something's in the water, I don't know, but there's that day it happens. So if you're actually saying this is a 9, I can't believe it, I want this, so now get out of the house and write the offer. We have to play to win. We can't hedge our bets. We can't see what happens. We can't, no, now, which is why you're fully prepared before we ever go look at a house. Because you might walk into that on day 1. And that sometimes happens. I call it, a lot of people call it a one and done. It could be a 1 day and done. My favorite is 1 house and done. We walked into 1 house, you fell in love, and we're out of here. And I've done that. I love doing that because the person's passionate about it. And my job is to get them what they want. But they only know that they want it because the consultation happened, because the buyer agreement was clear, because their expectations are solid. They know what the process is. They know what to expect. And as soon as they see it, they are ready to move on it, which is why I've, on average, never worked with a buyer for more than 30 days before opening escrow or contract, depending on the state, because they're that clear and we know what we're going after. So all of this is built into the buyer consultation. It's solidified in the buyer agreement.
So I would show all those homes. And then I heard some people go, I don't show more than 10 homes. If it's more than 10, I cut them loose. And that offended me because I can't stand anytime I think someone doesn't care about people. That's my thing. But then someone I respected, I saw how they worked. And I saw that they were able to get people into a home faster, but it was because they were taking that extra step to learn what they wanted. And that changed my thinking. And then now what I've been coaching and training is, what do you think you'd need to know to only show 3 homes? Not say that you're locked in, but to have that goal. How deep? Because for me, I wasn't getting as deep. I was like, let's go homes and discover ourselves and figure out which I think is a very confusing process. And looking back, I think I made things harder for everybody instead
Mm.
of doing the better job. But that's how I thought I would want to make a decision. Now I see it completely different. Ask as many questions as possible, figure it out so you can go, I know the perfect home. And I saw an agent do that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've been missing out. And to make someone else like, this is a hard process. What you're talking about here is having better clients and showing less homes. What you've been talking about is how to be more professional. Because what I was doing wasn't professional. It was caregiving and it was helpful, but it was not what they really wanted was just to get the friggin' home. So I love what you're talking about. And if anyone's really paying attention to some of the little lines that you've said in here, this is the amazing reframing that Eli does. It's fantastic, and that's why I love his classes. I've taken 3 of your courses. You have a course coming up. Tell us about that course coming up.
So the one coming up, this is my flagship course. I've been teaching this for years. I've always done it live, which means it's hard to schedule. But I've had people take this from all over the world in different industries, but primarily real estate. It's called Consultations That Convert. And it is about how to have more effective consultations so you convert more leads into exclusive, motivated clients who want to work with you. They're excited to work with you, and they're going to sign to work with you. It helps you learn everything about what they want, what they think, how they process information, how they're going to make a decision, so that you can look through all the different properties that are available and go, that one. And they're going to go, yes, that's everything I ever wanted. The flip side of the coin, by the way, is because I'm sure some of you are thinking, I don't spend that much time looking for houses. Neither do I. Here's how it works. After you've gone through a consultation at this depth, you can explain, I explained, so you're welcome to do this yourself. My job is not to find you a house. Maybe a couple of decades ago it was, but my job is not to find you a house. You're the one who's going to be up at 3 a.m. scrolling online on whatever website, and something's going to pop up and you're going to see it before I do, because I'm not up at 3 a.m. doing that. I'm sleeping so I can help you the next day. So when you're up doing all of that, send it to me. I'll see it. I'll see it when it pops up in my auto notification in the morning, but you probably will have seen it first. 90-something% of the time. So that's not my job. My job is, number one, to help you understand what you're actually looking for so that when you see it, it's like fireworks. You know that you found it. My job is also to help you understand what you don't want, so it starts getting easier to say no to any property that would be a waste of your time. You don't need to go and look at all the stuff that doesn't meet your criteria, doesn't meet your standards. So you can start saying no and only go after the ones that are actually a yes or worthy of considering a yes. So now they're slowing down. They're getting confident about what they want. I know what they want. So there's synergy around that. And then the second thing I said is, my job is not to help you find a house. My job is to help you get and keep the one you want. Because writing an offer is just how you start to get the one you want. Getting you through the process of inspections and secondary round of negotiations or third round of negotiations, getting you through it and over the finish line and getting you the keys, that is my job. And by the way, doing it in a way that gets you the best price and the best terms and gets it for you in a way that you're excited about it. That's my job. So I'm not here to help you find a house. I'm here to help you get the one you want. And that completely reframes the expectations of what my job is. And it's the truth. Again, I can look for a house, but I'm not going to find it before my clients 90-something% of the time. But I'm going to help them decide if they should see it, if they want to see it, and if they do want it, how we're going to get it.
So one thing that I've been telling agents this week is a lot of them are emailing me, calling me, text me, whatever about the process. And the thing that stands out to me is that because we are more of a service based than a sales based job, we don't do the sales part correctly sometimes.
Mm,
And the piece that we're missing is we're selling the result. We need to sell the result. We're not selling homes. We are selling ourselves to a point, but we're selling that we're going to get to a result, which is all the language you used was about that. Get you the home, keep the home that you want. Because that's an interesting point that really I've heard no one else really bring up is get the home and keep it. It's like, oh, wait, I could lose the house. But yeah, that's another result that I'm going to get for you.
yeah.
So agents, Eli's got the language skills to help you through this next step for people in Oregon, California, places that don't normally use a buyer broker agreement to help you do that next level, because it is going to have to be that level of the leveling up and using the language to help convey what we were talking about this ahead of time, which is this is a skills based. How'd you say it?
We are in a skills-based industry, but it hasn't always required that, and it's not always been a skills-based market. When it's easy to sell houses, when everybody's lining up and you barely have to do a thing, you don't need all of the same skills. But every time there's a change in the market, and believe me, this is a change. These different rules are creating a change. Any change is uncomfortable, any change is different, and that's where the people who have the skills always thrive because they know how to get through it. So knowing how to get deeper with your clients, knowing how to create clarity, having the skill set to do effective consultations that set the entire relationship up for a win is absolutely vital. And the part that's going to be different that we haven't said explicitly on this conversation, but I think is worth it, is that now not only are you going to be signing a buyer agreement to say, hey, I'm representing you, but you also need to include in there, and here's what it's going to cost. Here's how much I'm going to get paid for successfully representing you. And yeah, if you've worked with listings, you've had that kind of conversation before. It's different when you're working with buyers because they're considering their budget in a different way. If you've only worked with buyers and you've never had to sign something saying you're going to pay me, this is new. It requires a very different skill set of how you define value, how you create expectations, and how you formulate agreement on what a successful outcome would be and how that would be worth it to the buyer. What would make it worth it to the buyer? And you're going to be developing your entire set of consultation skills around what would make however much you're going to charge worth it or more than worth it to the person sitting in front of you. And can you actually make good on whatever you discuss? Because that's just as important. Otherwise, it's unethical and you're going to end up in court at some point. If you're going to say, this is what I'm going to do for you, you better be ready to do it and you better know how to do it. And that's where having effective consultations really comes into play.
And also, I think the language that you teach is about the piece about communicating the value. We can have the skills, we can have all the skills in the world, but if you are not good at communicating that value, no one will ever know. It's a different kind of secret agent. There's a secret agent who's really quiet. There's a secret agent who just doesn't know how to promote themselves and to be known for their skills, sitting back, hoping everyone else notices. And I think that's going to be what stands out here on the other chapter of this whole story is that ability to communicate our value. You know, a lot of agents, it's semi-ironic in a way, but a lot of agents are complaining about the National Association of Realtors and that they don't do anything. And then we have the public saying, well, buyers agents don't do anything, at least in the comment section of places. Both have the same issue, is that they have not been conveying their value. I guarantee you that anyone who's been your client knows your value because you took them through this process. So this has been fantastic. Is there any last words of wisdom that you want to leave people with as they're trying to deal with just this overwhelming amount of information, predictions, suggestions, and all that to keep themselves focused and not get overwhelmed?
Yeah, I think there's a few things to keep in mind. Number one is have a plan. If you don't have a plan, make a plan. What is your plan for working with buyers in this new environment? Study the buyer broker agreement that you're going to use, whatever it is. Study it, learn it, know how to talk about it. If you don't know how to talk about it, that won't instill confidence in your leads. They won't become your clients. So you have to have the competence to be confident about what you're explaining in the first place. If that's hard for you, take an extra class, go talk with another agent, sit in with someone who's done this before and listen to the way they explain it to someone else. Put in the effort to learn how to explain what you do and what you're asking someone to sign. That is absolutely vital. Part number 2 is figure out what skills you're missing and go learn them. The ones that I recommend are all around communication, which Mike was just talking about. You need to learn how to communicate more effectively, more clearly, so that you can help buyers understand what they want, because they don't when they meet you. Most of them don't. It's your job to help them figure it out. You're co-creating what the outcome is going to be, because you're the professional who knows what to help them identify. But if you don't know what questions to ask in order to help them identify those things, you can't move them forward. So that's really where I come in. The Consultations That Convert course, I'm excited, is finally recorded. It's going to be available by the time this is made public. So if you're watching this, there's a way for you to get access. And it's something that you can watch on your own at your speed and take the time to practice and implement these skills that will change the way that you talk to people and increase the conversion rate of people who meet with you to those who are excited and motivated to exclusively work with you and agree to whatever your fee is, as long as you can structure it in a way that's ethical and appropriate and fits the relationship that you're developing. So that's going to be at coachwitheli.com/consultations, and you'll always be able to find information about it there. And then last but not least, whatever else you need to do to build up your confidence so that you can step into a room as the person someone can look to as a leader. They can depend on you knowing what you're doing. Figure out what that is for you and do it. If it's always listening to your favorite song before you walk into the consultation, do it. If it's studying something enough until you can explain it in your sleep, do it. If it's following along someone else and watching how they do it until they start including you in the process, do that. Whatever is going to get you to a level of confidence where you can authentically and congruently walk into a consultation and know what you're doing. And you're not walking in being like, I'm in charge. You're walking in saying, I got this. It's a different kind of energy where there's that confidence that no matter which way it goes, I'm here. I got this. I can take care of you. I can help you get what you want. Learn what that process is for yourself. It's not the same for everyone. I work on this with all of my coaching clients, and you got to find what your skeleton key is for helping you feel confident going into these conversations, because really good chance the lead that you're about to meet with, they're not. They lack confidence in themselves. They lack confidence in the industry. They lack confidence in the process, and they don't know you, so they probably also lack confidence in you. You need to come in a confident way so you can support them in getting comfortable and then confident with what's going to happen next. It's the journey that you're going to take them on, so you have to own it first.
I think this is an amazing time. I feel like 50% of agents are working on themselves and going after this, and then another big portion are not. And the ones who are working on it now, taking these classes, getting in masterminds, working with other agents, are going to be ready for whatever comes. And we don't know what's going to come. So start working on yourselves. And Eli, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm looking forward to running myself back through that course.
Thanks for having me back, and I'm excited that you'll be going through it. I'm always excited to hear your feedback. So this is the new upgraded version. There's going to be a couple of things in there that weren't before, so I'm psyched to hear what you have to say.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Eli.
Thank you.